Network Entertainment.
Hello, everyone. This is Let's Talk, and I'm Pia Hontiveros. What does it take to be a storm chaser? What does it mean to be a storm chaser? What is life like as a storm chaser? We need to talk about this, decode it, unbox, unpack. And joining me now on that talk is James Reynolds, the founder of Earth Uncut TV, who was here about a week or even more, a week and a half ago, because of Typhoon Uwan, and before that, because of Typhoon Tino. James, of course, is someone I've watched and listened to and interviewed, and most importantly, trust. Hello, James, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me on today.
Yeah, James, let's talk about this, no? Tell us what life is like as a storm chaser. I know it's a big question and you could take like an hour just to describe it, but it must be so unpredictable and very challenging, but I suppose every inch fulfilling.
I think the best way to describe it is it's a roller coaster. Honestly, 95% of the time I'm at home with my kids, supporting my wife, who's a high flying career woman. I'm the quintessential stay at home dad, but it's the other 5% where things get a little bit unorthodox and a bit wacky and extreme at times. And that's when I'm on the road, traveling overseas or within Japan itself, where I live. Chasing typhoons, just getting into the worst possible place where the craziest weather is happening, and then cameras rolling, broadcasting live, just doing everything I do when I'm chasing the storms. So it's a lot of normality punctuated by extreme strangeness, I think is a good way to describe it.
That's nice. A lot of normality punctuated with what's that word you use?
I
With
think a lot of wackiness.
strangeness.
I think.
Oh, wackiness. Yeah. Sounds very much like a journalist's life, no?
I can imagine, and during the day to day normal life, I'm kind of wishing I was on the road chasing, and then when I'm chasing, I kind of wish I was at home. So it's one of those kind of dualities of strangeness.
It's interesting because you say that the mission is to get into areas most affected by typhoon and broadcast it, and that's why you've been in the Philippines several times. And I like what you said. No, you've been quoted as saying, "This is a core part of what I am, and that's my identity." That's so important. Like when you can say that, it's a core part of what you are. In other words, it's not like it's just a job. It is actually like how should I say it? Like a vocation. It's a passion, and you're just so lucky to be able to live that. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anyone who has a passion for nature, so you might have bird watchers or wildlife photographers, or people who surf or sailing or skiers and snowboarders, people who have a very, very strong direct connection with nature. It really, a lot of the times, is part of their core being and really what drives them, and a big part of why they get out of bed every day, and why they kind of strive to live their lives, to be able to do whatever it is that is that passion. And that is certainly the case with me. I don't on a day-to-day basis identify myself as a storm chaser, because that'd just be a little bit strange. But deep inside me, I'm like, okay, how long is it until typhoon season? Or we're in typhoon season. Is there going to be another typhoon? When is my next adventure? When is my next mission? It's always, every day, at least once, it's in the back of my mind. And it's very much a part of who I am.
Yeah. This next question, James, I'm going to say, but at the same time, I'm going to say that I had asked you earlier, what were you doing before you were a storm chaser, before you were chasing storms, and not mention the covering volcanic eruptions, etc. What was life like before you started chasing storms? And what is it that reeled you in? And that's why I was asking you earlier, like, where did how did you get in? but then, Syempre the question is, what did you take in college and what were you planning to do? So how did this all pan out for you? This life as a storm chaser.
So, right from the beginning as a kid, I was always really interested in the weather and nature. Back when I was small, we didn't have the internet. It was like Discovery Channel, National Geographic. You put a VHS in the machine, you watch an amazing documentary on hurricanes, typhoons, or volcanoes. And I was always the kid in geography class who would always get so excited and just be sat there watching it and loving every moment of being able to witness these kind of things through the TV screen. Um, but when it came to college, it was kind of these two separate things which naturally and unintentionally just fell together. So, first of all, my love of nature and my passion for weather and things like that was always there in the background. But secondly, at college, it just so happened that I really had an interest in East Asia. As first of all, as just a young backpacker, I backpacked around Southeast Asia, got a real
Oh,
interest in the culture and the places and the people. And then by the time it was college time, I was enrolled in Chinese studies. So
okay.
that obviously took me to East Asia a lot as well, both to China and to Taiwan, studying Mandarin Chinese.
Yeah.
And
But
it
at the
was
time
during that
you were
that
interested in the typhoons already, or what was it? Why Chinese studies? Why East Asia?
just because I've been fortunate enough to travel to the region and was really interested and just blown away by Southeast Asia in particular was my first exposure to this part of the world. And then as a young person going to places like Hong Kong, Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, it was really eye opening.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is where there's so much energy and dynamism in this part of the world compared to what I was used to in the UK. So Chinese seemed to be like the logical step to just getting to Asia and being productive about it rather than just turning up with no plan. And it was only after I got to Asia, enrolled in the Chinese program, was studying in China and doing my scholarship in Taiwan as well, that it dawned on me that there's a lot of crazy extreme weather and nature in this part of the world. So it was on that
Yeah.
Mandarin scholarship in Taiwan where we got slammed by like two typhoons in a month. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is maybe a part of the world I'm kind of could settle down in and start working in.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then from there, you ended up working in China. You found work in China because that's where, in other words, that's where you really want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got very lucky. I sent an email to a small company just saying, "Hey, you need anyone?" They were a boutique production company. What they did was assist foreign news organizations and documentary filmmakers working in China because there's a lot of red tape, paperwork, and obviously
Yeah.
language barriers. So a lot of these film crews need help when they're on the ground, and that's what basically the company I joined we did.
And
So
what year was that?
that
What
was in
year was that?
2008. So
Okay.
2008 to 2009, I was doing that for a year. Uh, and I got to meet some really interesting people, some really talented professionals, especially camera operators and directors and producers. I got to visit some amazing parts of China. And it just so happened I actually got to work on a Discovery Channel show
Hmm.
which was about me, or portion of it was about me chasing typhoons, and managed to get my production company I was working with to do like the production stuff when we were filming in Taiwan. So it was just a really lucky timing, amazing opportunities, and it really laid a foundation for when I eventually moved to Hong Kong to set up as a freelancer.
Yeah. Okay. And of course China because at that time it was what an emerging superpower. So
Yeah,
logically that was a choice.
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people in the world speak Chinese. I studied Chinese. Languages are tough. I struggle with them, but I still use it to this day. The skills I learned at college especially when I'm chasing in Taiwan, I go there a lot. I'm
Yeah.
using my Chinese, which I learned 20, 25 years ago.
Okay. And then, like you said, that was what allowed you to set up an independent uh, production company or
Yeah.
something like that. No, that was already Earth Uncut TV.
That
Love it.
that came afterwards. So in 2009, I moved to Hong Kong to be with my girlfriend, who's now my wife and mother of my children. So I followed her down there, and that's when it was time to go solo. Basically, it was no one was hiring in Hong Kong because it was in the aftermath of the global financial
True.
crisis. Everyone was cutting down and saving money, so I was basically kind of left just fended for myself. Um,
Yeah.
but the stars aligned. A good dose of luck, but also tenacity and sticking at it, and just the
Yeah.
passion, keeping the fire in the belly, so to speak. And I was lucky that things really it didn't happen overnight. It took 2 or 3 years of and I almost threw the can and I was like, this isn't going to work out. I'm going to have to get an office job. And then, suddenly like that, everything just took off and haven't looked back.
Yeah. And at that time, that was when YouTube and all these social media platforms were emerging, which allowed independent creators like you to not have to depend on the big networks, for example. And you could just put your work out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really a revolution for self-publishing, and it was tremendously useful. I've been on YouTube since 2006. That's how I got my first clients. Were people who were just on the web looking for, all right, we need footage from this, that, and whatever, and then they would find my stuff on YouTube and contact me, and that's how basically everything kind of snowballed from there. So it was definitely, lucky in that respect. And now we're seeing it now, the way technology develops,
Yeah.
even between the infancy of social media and now what people are able to do now, it's just incredible, and it's changing all the time. And I'll admit, I've been a little bit left behind at times. You get very set in one format, and then something new crops up. And there's a lot of competition as well these days. Everyone's got a camera in their pocket. Everyone is a storm chaser when they're being hit by a storm. So it's been really interesting. It's part of a challenging part of the job, but also very interesting keeping on top of the technology.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. And I was just thinking, you said something a while ago, like, but it's almost like the stars aligned for you. Just when China was emerging, you chose to go to China. Just when you go independent, that's when YouTube starts. And I'm so impressed that you've been on YouTube for like 20 years already.
I know,
You're still
it's
there,
crazy.
strong, huh? And then you don't just chase extreme storms. You also go for like volcanic eruptions and snow adventures. But it seems like what is it? I mean, you're most known for being a storm chaser, or you know, uh, also the snow adventures and the volcanic eruptions also, or what? What is it? What's the
It's all built around the typhoons. That's what I was doing first. That's what opened up doors to be able to do other things as well. It's actually been quite a long time since I've done any volcanic eruption coverage, because there was the typhoons were really what kick-started everything. And
yeah? Oh, there's somebody behind you.
hello,
Hello.
Okay, where's the wire?
I don't know. I'll have to get it for you later.
Okay.
No problem.
Oh, what's his name and how old is he?
Finished.
Okay.
That's Hugo. Apologies for the I suspected that was going to happen. It
It's
wasn't.
okay. It's okay.
At least it wasn't
Yeah. What's
with
his name?
tears or my brother hit me. That's Hugo, my youngest, who's almost 10. I lose
Okay.
track. He's 9
How old?
still. He's 9 still. So.
9. Oh, that's so cute. What a nice cameo. Yeah.
But yeah,
But
that's it.
anyway,
Storm chaser at home. I'm the only one. I'm on daddy duty right now. My wife's in my own business. So
that's okay. Okay. Um, you've been to the Philippines a few times. So I wanted to ask you what was it like for you? The latest Tino and one, of course, was just a few weeks ago, but you were here last year, right? 2024. And I remember, and we were talking about it a while ago before we started recording. I remember that I did interview you before, and I can't remember how many times, but I know I did. and I can't even remember which storm it was about or which one. And then I asked you, and you said, yeah, I did an interview with you. I just can't remember either what it was, right?
Unfortunately, I've been to the Philippines for many typhoons, and I've done a lot of interviews, but I definitely remember, us having a good
Yeah,
conversation. Again, I just can't remember which year it
yeah.
was. Um,
It's okay,
but yeah,
James. I can't remember either, so we're in the same boat.
well, I know you've interviewed a
But
lot
I'm
of
sure
people as well, so. But no, it's
that,
been more or less every year, with obviously with the exception of the COVID years for 20 years now. I think my first, what I would say, real professional trip to the Philippines, once I was fully set up and established as Earth Uncut TV, was actually the Mayon eruption in December
oh,
2009, or was it
okay.
2010? I think it was 2010. Sorry. Um, so that was the first actual trip I did when I had invested in the new camera gear and was really going at this professionally. I had done a couple of
Yeah.
typhoons before then, but that was really when I didn't really have a clue what I was doing, not doing it properly. Um, and then, yeah, more or less every year since then, on average, just because unfortunately your country is in the firing line for the
Yeah.
most intense typhoons in the world.
Right. Plus the volcanic eruptions. And earlier, while we were talking before we started recording, I even asked you, um, were you here when Pinatubo erupted in 1991?
Yeah,
And then you said, no, I don't think so because how old were you then? 8 years
I was
old.
only 8, so
And
probably
then I
not
was
a good
saying,
place for an 8-year-old to be anywhere
yeah.
near
So you're
Pinatubo.
moving on. You missed that. You missed that. But like you said, okay, so Mayon and then other storms as well. But it isn't just the typhoon, right? It's not just what happens in that weather system that makes it interesting, but the stories that you gathered, the people you talk to along the way, the experiences they share with you, right?
Yeah, on a personal level, that's a huge. I don't necessarily broadcast a lot of that publicly, but on a personal level, I don't just chase to see wild weather.
Mm-hmm.
I chase because the whole process fascinates me. I often liken it to a complex puzzle. There's a lot of different pieces scattered around in different places which have to be put together in a certain way for me to fulfill my mission. And I really, on a personal level, enjoy that process. I enjoy the logistical challenges. I kind of enjoy the whole, right, I got to put my life on hold and I got to jump on a plane and be somewhere in 6 or 12 hours or whatever, and then just hit the road, go somewhere I've never been before or a town I never visited, and then just see what happens. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Invariably along the way, I go to stunning places. I was in the Batanes Islands in September, which is, without exaggeration, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been on in the world. And I've been to a lot of very nice places. Um, and I missed the typhoon and didn't even really come close to the islands. But that is a trip which will forever stay in my heart because of the people I met, the amazing geography and scenery of the place, and the times I had there. Um, at the end of the day, whether I get in the right place or not doesn't matter so much now that I'm 20 years into this than I was when I first started out. Because
Mm-hmm.
it is very much, part of the journey. The people I meet, the places I go, is just as important as my own aims of documenting the typhoon.
Mm-hmm. You just document, no? It's not like you okay, for people who've seen the Twister movies, for example, you don't study the data. You're not a scientist, so you just document.
No, I'm not a scientist, but I have a good understanding. And just having observed these things so many times for such a long period of time, in the field, up front, close, it actually does give you a good kind of understanding of how they work compared to people who are real experts in the field, but studying them through computer screens or charts or whatever. It's but I do take some rudimental measurements in the typhoons, especially the strong ones, like the pressure readings. If I get into the eye of the typhoon, that's can be very useful information.
Mhm.
But primarily, it's all about the documentation and the reporting on it. You know.
Yeah. And the typhoons, the weather disturbances, they're getting wilder every year, right?
Well, what we're saying, it's everything's in a little bit of a strange funk right now. The actual, believe it or not, the Western Pacific Ocean has been seeing almost declining levels of activity. But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that a lot of powerful destructive storms are hitting land, because they are. And what we're seeing a lot recently is what we call the rapid intensification. So a lot of the storms seem to be really spinning up very, very quickly, quite close to land. And that's a big problem for communities, for the forecasters, the scientists, because it means you don't get so much of a warning and a lead time before a destructive storm can make landfall. But yeah, the science is very complicated, and there's still a lot of answers that people are seeking in terms of global storm activity, how the typhoons are behaving and reacting to the changing climate which we're seeing happening.
Yeah, I brought that up, the question about science, because for the longest time, Filipinos, us, as a people, we would mistakenly think that the typhoon itself, or the storm, is the natural disaster. The natural disaster, when it's actually our failure to prepare, for example, infrastructure, or what have you. And at the same time, if we had um, correct land use or correct urban planning, not letting people build homes along rivers or very near the sea, for example, then we wouldn't be having natural disasters, right? So in other words, there's that, and so many architects, urban planners, weather experts here in the Philippines have said that time and again, because there is that mistaken notion. Okay, the typhoon is the natural disaster. It's not, right? That's nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Typhoons play an extremely vital part in the planet's mechanism for balancing itself out. You get too much heat builds up in the equatorial and tropical regions. What the typhoon does is it transfers excess heat out of the ocean and the atmosphere and sends it north and dissipates it in the more northerly latitudes, because nature's always seeking a balance. If something gets, uh, overweight in one way or another, it's just seeking, that balance. And that's what typhoons are. They're incredibly important. Many countries rely on them for filling up the reservoirs and the water sources. They're very important things. But as you just said, unfortunately, we as human beings are more or less always getting in the way of them. Obviously, we have a right to live where we live, and being human comes with risks. If you walk outside, you might get struck by a lightning bolt one day. There's always an element of risk that exists by just living. I know that sounds obvious, but people sometimes don't think of it that way. But we can also do a lot and a lot more to safeguard our communities which are vulnerable. Identify which communities are vulnerable, and then do everything we can to educate the people who live here and have plans in place so that when a disaster is looming or looks like it's going to unfold, that everyone knows exactly what they've got to do, from the community leader level down to the mother and father who have young babies or elderly relatives they've got to look after. Everyone knows what they need to do when that moment comes.
Yeah.
And it's not just a Philippines problem. I live in Japan, and we had 20,000 people killed in the tsunami and earthquake in 2011. And this is, disaster preparedness here is probably some of the best in the world. And despite all that, we still have, these terrible tragedies happening. So education, and communication. But the challenge nowadays is the mess that is the information space and fake news, misinformation, people just churning out nonsense to get clicks and earn money from it. So I feel like my work is I'm not
Crucial.
blowing my trumpet, but more important now than I think it has been at any moment in the past, in terms of
Yes.
just being a reliable and trustworthy source of primary information from ground zero as dramatic events, natural events are unfolding.
Yeah, two things. So first, what you're saying is, we need to get out of the way if we, because we like to say we should respect nature. So if we respect nature, we should keep out of the way of nature. Because if we put ourselves there, then we put ourselves in nature, right? And it's
I don't
good.
know if
I'm
that's
really,
possible. We're exposed to nature every day,
but what I
in
mean
one
is,
way or another. It's very difficult.
yeah, but then, if you build your house along a river that regularly swells, then that is a problem.
Absolutely,
Of course,
absolutely.
then again, that has more to do, I guess, with local government, law enforcement, or planning, correct urban planning. Then the other one, and I'm glad you brought that up about fake news because, and it was so, how should I say it? In Tagalog, it's nakakabahala. It's so worrisome. In the aftermath of Tino and Juan, there was so much fake news video. I mean, everybody knows what fake, and then it was like people taking advantage of people who were afraid of what was going on, and then producing all these fake videos about so-called the so-called effects of the typhoon in the country. I mean, wow. I mean, it's like where what people waste their time doing stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's dangerous. It's not helpful at all.
No, it's not. And it's the darker side of human nature. You're going to get these bad apples who are going to take advantage. Not only try and scam people through all sorts of elaborate schemes, but then just churning out nonsense to try and get clicks. Basically, I think that's what they're trying to do, get attention and clicks. I don't know where this is going to go. It really is kind of uncharted territory. But I think it does mean that when I am putting out real video and updates and
Yeah.
information, I think it gives it more value.
Right.
And I've got to
Right.
tread carefully as well, with my messaging and try and educate my followers and people who come to me for information. It's I've got high standards I need to keep and continue to work on that as best I can as well. So it's very
Yeah.
important. It means a lot to me. It's like having integrity in this business is the most important thing because as
Yeah.
soon as you lose that, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, well, that's why I said in the intro, you're someone that I don't just watch and listen to you and interview. I said I trust you because you're for real.
Well,
So
I
unlike
appreciate that. That's very
fake
kind of you to say.
video creators, no, and you're someone that we should be listening to, which is so important. And a while ago, when you were explaining nature and science and everything, and I was thinking, yeah, this guy just a while ago said he's not a scientist, but just sounds just like a scientist, and we call it. I mean, we call it like the SME, subject matter expert. So these are people we should be listening to, and that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. But anyway, okay. So, um, uh, you've been to the Philippines a few times, and then how do you make decisions? Like, okay, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to Taiwan. I'm going to go to Thailand or whatever. You study first what the weather reports are saying, like how strong a typhoon is, for example, before you decide to go, right?
Yeah, it can be a complex decision making process, but at the core of it is I am going after typhoon strength systems if they're going to make landfall somewhere. So that's a tropical storm with sustained winds of 120 kilometers per hour. Once it
Mm.
reaches that level, we call it a typhoon, and that's when I will try and chase it. In most cases, I'll try and go after it. Um, Sometimes it can be quite a tough call to know whether it's going to reach that threshold. And there's been incidences where I think it won't, and I've stayed at home, and then the storm really rapidly intensifies and spins up strong. That happened this year with a storm in Taiwan in July. So I was kicking myself for missing that one.
Just
But
like a journalist, when we miss out on the story, uh-oh.
exactly, it
Oh
was silly,
God.
and I kicked myself for being silly and missing that. But now, as I get older, and because I get so much out of the journey, and as I mentioned before, putting the puzzle together to solve the to solve the mystery or whatever, because I get so much out of that on a personal level, I'm now going forward more inclined to go after the more marginal setups,
Mm.
because the whole process of chasing the storms and being on the road in the field working, for me, is so fulfilling that I don't need to be in the craziest, windiest typhoon to feel like I'm getting fulfillment in my work. So unfortunately, I think you might be seeing more of me in the Philippines going forward.
That means we'll be having even worse weather because James is here. And that's one way we can tell, I mean, it's not just Pag-asa, the state weather bureau, that tells us what's going to happen, but you guys, when we know you're coming, uh-oh, that's
Yeah,
trouble for us
yeah,
because they're
yeah.
on their way.
Unfortunately, that's often the case.
Yeah. Do your kids understand what you're doing?
They do. Only in the last year or two, because
Mm.
now that they're users of YouTube, and they love watching YouTubers, and now they know that I've got a YouTube channel, and they think that's kind of cool.
Oh,
Actually, my son, he made me. I'll show you this. He made me at his little class, technology class. He 3D printed a
oh,
YouTube uh,
oh, how cute.
uh, plaque, which they send out to creators who get 100,000 followers. But I never
Uh,
received one from YouTube, so he made me one. So
oh,
that's
that's so
very
sweet.
sweet and touching.
Yeah.
But it shows that they're getting dialed into the whole information space.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be very careful about how it all goes, obviously, as a parent. But no, they're really starting to get dialed into it, and they're getting a more developed understanding of, from science class at school,
Yeah.
geography,
Which
the
child?
weather, things
Yeah.
like that.
Which child made that? Was that Hugo, the one who
Yes,
had a
who just
cameo?
came in, yeah, who came in earlier.
Hugo.
So I got back from my trip, and that was the present when I came back. So I was very touched. That was very
Oh,
sweet.
okay. And they ask you questions about it. I mean, they talk
Yeah,
to you about it. They want to know.
yeah. My older son's a little more cautious, so he's always like, "You got to be careful. You shouldn't be doing that."
Oh,
And my
oh,
younger son is shows an interest. And when they're older, I'll take them. I don't want
you
to take
take
them
them along.
storm. No, I wouldn't. It's
Oh,
too much stress. I
okay.
worry. It would worry me too much. But I'll take them to the coast on a windy day, and we'll go look at the waves. I'll take them to volcanoes. No problem with that.
Yeah.
But the typhoons are too unpredictable, and it would just cause me too much stress and anxiety.
So you would take them along like when they're like 15 years old, like
Yeah, maybe just like
older.
not overseas, but
Ah,
if it depends. There could be a
yeah.
situation where we get typhoons in Tokyo, so chances are they're going to see one anyway. We live in typhoon alleys.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, there'd definitely be a case where we would drive to the coast and watch the waves crashing against the cliffs. For typhoons south of us, and I think it's important for kids to witness that, and be exposed to know what the risks are, the dangers, and how to stay safe and things like that. There are responsible ways to do it. I'm not going to just take them on a plane and take them into a super typhoon. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. James, we have several volcanoes that are, well, acting up a bit. So, I mean, well, apart from Mayon, Canlaon in Negros Occidental, Taal volcano.
Yeah.
So I guess you've been there, or you plan to go just in case things get a bit, for lack of a better word, heated up.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on them. Taal erupted actually the morning I flew out of the Philippines last week. The activity is quite sporadic right now. So what I look for with the volcanoes is like a sustained period of activity where maybe you're seeing 10, 11, 12 explosive eruptions a day.
Yeah.
Right now, the volcanoes seem to be like popping once every week or 10 days, which makes it very difficult for me to figure out
Yeah.
how to film
Yeah.
that. The timing is very difficult. Um,
Yeah.
but if any of them started escalating their activity, then I would definitely come down
Mm,
and,
okay.
and
But you
set
were
up
here.
and try.
Yeah. But you were here in the Philippines in 2015, right? When there were mountain climbers or hikers who got lost in Pinatubo. Was that? Am I right?
Oh, was it during a typhoon?
It's during a typhoon or something.
I was there. I was in the Philippines in 2015, 2016 as well. I don't recall off the top of my head. Again, there's been so many,
Yeah,
so many,
yeah, right.
so many
Yeah,
trips.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
some of the details slip my mind.
yeah.
But
Oh, but
I was at
yeah.
Taal in right. My last trip before the COVID
Oh,
shutdowns was to
20,
Taal in
January
February.
2020.
Oh, was it January or February 2020?
Yeah,
And it was very interesting. And then I flew home, and we all got locked down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right. Well, Pinatubo. Well, this was back in 2020. No, no, no. Oh God, when was that? I forgot. 2020 or 2021. We were eight. No, oh my goodness, I forgot. Right before COVID, I think, because they opened up a trail in Pinatubo, and you can walk. I don't know if they're still open now, but I guess
Yeah,
you might want to do something like that. It's just interesting, and I remember walking through the trail, and then you go up all the way to the crater, and I was
amazing.
thinking, goodness, I used to cover the lahar flows from this very volcano, and it's just amazing. I mean, nature is amazing, right, James?
Yeah, how everything grows back and how tranquil and beautiful it is. And you wouldn't know that such violence had taken place there just, 20, 30 years before. It is amazing. It is amazing.
Well, can we get some final words from you? Some parting words, words of inspiration, for
Yeah,
young
well,
people who might be watching and listening and are thinking, I think I want to do what James Reynolds is doing.
I think, yeah, for the youngsters out there, it's like, you know, don't be afraid of following the journey your passions take you down, because they can open doors to some very, very interesting experiences, and and have mentors as well. If you can find people who are more experienced than you, and don't be afraid to approach them and ask them questions or advice and guidance. I think that's very important. That's how I got started. I didn't just go into a typhoon without knowing, by myself, with no knowledge. I approached someone who was older and more experienced, and learned a lot from them. So and I think my another important point is just be very, very careful with your sources of information, especially on social media. Make sure it's people you've known for a long time. If it's just some random page with some image or some video or something, just be skeptical of it. Stick to sources which you've known for a while and have vetted and trust, and then you'll be saving yourself a lot of
Yeah.
silliness.
And you're volunteering as a future mentor for all these young people who will be following
Well,
your footsteps. Well, now there's
I, I,
technology.
I, I plan to. That's definitely right now. I'm still kind of in the thick of figuring it all out myself still. And actually, to be honest, I could learn a lot from the youngsters on how to effectively use a lot of these new technologies and social media stuff. So, it's a two-way thing. But yeah, definitely once I retire, I'll be
Retire. You're
I'll
so
be willing
too
to
young
be a
to retire.
mentor if anyone wants my advice.
Yeah. Well, anyway, James, I wanted to say thank you very much. Maraming salamat. And I'm sure you've heard that so many times before. And then I was going to say, let me know when you're in the country because I have something for you.
Um,
But then it's so easy to find out when you're in the country because it's going to be announced for sure. I just need
very
to be
kind.
able to meet up with you so that I can give that to you. So thank you, James. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and all the best.
Maraming salamat to James Reynolds of Earth Uncut TV. And like I said, he's someone I've always watched, listened to, and interviewed. and trust, and that's so important. Integrity is so important for all of us, actually. So, well, now that we've talked about it, what the life of a storm chaser is like, and decoded, unboxed, and unpacked, let's keep talking. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Thank you for joining us.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.